All right. Man, I'll just kick straight into it. Why not?
No worries. Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, man. And welcome to the Pagey Train. Today, having the show with me, Arka, actor, director, writer, award-winning filmmaker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, man, I think this is a perfect episode because, like, everything's in lockdown. We obviously I can't have people in the studio, but you're currently in lockdown. Overseas. So I think this is a perfect time to do a lockdown episode of the Pagey Train with you.
Yeah, I think it's worked out in a bizarro but kind of great way, hasn't it? So I think I'm in quarantine, so just a couple of weeks in this really lovely, can't complain, this really lovely room, lovely place in Thailand at the moment, in Bangkok. Yep. But I know that things back home are obviously, I just left as it was getting really intense in Sydney, so yeah. Hearing from all my friends that it's quite not looking great at the moment, but look, these are the moments of life now, isn't it? So it's kind of about getting through and
it's all comparative, really. Like, how bad is bad? We're going through some bad stuff, but when you look at the rest of the world, man, I don't think we're doing too bad. It's all when you look at the contrast, we're not doing too bad. Like, if this is bad, this is a bad that I think we can manage. But
oh look, yeah, absolutely. I think if that's the worst, if this is one of the worst situations in Australia, I think it's definitely manageable. The whole world's going through it exactly as you said. So I'm in Asia at the moment, and I'm watching stuff on the news and talking to people here, and much more relaxed here. There's way more cases and stuff, but it's much more relaxed. So I think like people here just know how to deal better, I should say, with a pandemic or an endemic, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think Australia is just going through a bit of a learning curve, just like every other place that hasn't dealt with anything like this before.
Yeah, well, as artists though, it's I like the fact that we're still about. We're still able to navigate through a world in a pandemic. Don't get me wrong, can't wait for this damn pandemic to be over. But some beneficials have come out. Some benefits have come out of it, I guess. Like, I suppose it's a really thin silver lining there for a lot of people. But no, I've gotten a lot of work done, man, during COVID.
Look, honestly, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm sort of bragging or anything, but I've had the busiest sort of year, really, busiest year to almost from last year onwards, so around August last year, and I'm blessed. I feel really great about it because work is the best way to sort of move through these kind of crazy times. But I was also talking to my agent and a few other colleagues in the industry, and they were saying that it's pretty great to see that our industry, film, television, especially not so much theater, but film and television have become quite, pandemic proof or COVID proof, however you want to call it. Like, the fact that we can sort of work around restrictions, we can work around crazy sort of changes, as long as you have all the things in place. And I know it's a headache for a lot of the producers and then the networks and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, we can get it done. And I think the one thing that never stopped during this whole thing was us, because people are staying at home and they're wanting to watch movies and they're wanting to watch TV shows and they're wanting to watch, there's commercials need to be made and stuff needs to happen. So I think we're kind of blessed in a weird way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's really weird. My audience is growing. The products that I make have become more broad. I'm certainly doing a lot more streaming services for people.
Right.
So business has picked up. There was definitely a moment there where business just stopped and ceased. But then there was an uptake, and then there was sort of like a bit of a digital gold rush, if you like. I've been very busy during this time.
That's great. Yeah. It has definitely been a digital gold rush. That's a good way to put it. I think, and we're also connected over, like, we can do this. We're also connected with Zoom and Skype and whatever, and in the internet and Google. So, like, for example, when we were going into, I worked on a film, probably jumping ahead here, but I worked on a film here out west, which we went into development in Sydney while it was like literally the first lockdown, in March 2020. So we made that film through lockdown, which is pretty astonishing, really.
Yeah, totally, man. I was in a film during lockdown. I was in a kung fu action film.
Wow.
So yeah, I got to be the bad guy at the end of this film, which is actually about coronavirus.
Okay, right.
So yeah, I was collecting people to experiment on them in this film, and I
Right.
Yeah, I was the bad guy. That I had a big shout out to Maria Tran. She got to kick my ass at the end of the film, which was fantastic. It was a lot of fun doing fight choreography.
Yeah,
Um,
great.
so it's still working. And for someone, I'm more of a I'm more behind the camera than in front of the camera. Don't get
Right.
me wrong. Do hostings and do voiceovers, but acting on camera, it's not something I do a lot of.
Yeah.
How do you find that? Because you do both. You're both
Mm.
behind and in front of the camera. Is there
Yeah.
moments that you favor between the two? Like, do you favor being an actor more than a director, or vice versa?
Oh, it's a good question. I haven't been directing for too long. I've only been sort of directing for the last. Well, I mean, it's been a while if you think about it, but I guess like I'm still sort of in the the growth stage of being being a writer director.
Mm,
Acting is something I've done for a long time now. Oh, well, a lot longer now. At least a decade. So I think acting comes quite naturally to me. I'm able to sort of slip in and out of characters and read scripts and understand it. I get that world pretty quickly. I
mhm,
started on stage as well, so I've done sort of different forms of acting. When it comes to behind the camera stuff, I'm still very new to the technical components of directing and filmmaking. I'm still learning a lot. But in terms of scripting and writing and creating the world and development, and actual direction in terms of like directing actors, that stuff comes a little more easy to me.
mhm.
So I think everyone has their shortcomings and their sort of advantage, strength and weaknesses, I guess. So it's about strengthening as much as you can, but it's not about sort of like stressing because you don't know something. So I like to
Mm.
have like good a good. I like that's why I'm very collaborative. I like to work with you know got people that are technically minded, that can help me with my shortcomings. But look, in terms of favoring, I don't know. I really enjoy directing a lot and I enjoy writing a lot nowadays. But I think it's just about the project. Like I don't think I would enjoy so much, writing for other people constantly. I think that I would like to write for myself and projects that I'm interested in, or write with people that I'm interested in
Mhm.
writing with, and directing things that I think are interesting and cool. Like I don't think I'd be just directing for the sake of it. Whereas I do that a lot for acting. Jobs that necessarily it's not something that's not every gig is my favorite gig, but it's work, so you have to do it. But some things come along that are really cool, and some things are like, meh. But yeah, So I don't know, kind of 50-50.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think when it comes to directing, I think there's things that I've directed that I necessarily wouldn't have directed if I was leading the project.
Yeah.
Being
Yep.
hired to direct is really cool, but
Yeah.
there's things that I know, like I know what you mean though, like things that are coming from you, and you have a vision for a story. But
Yep.
I think there's an interesting pendulum there, because once you start going into other people's work, it's harder to get back to your work. That's the journey that I've
Mm,
sort of been on. When I'm working on other people's projects, it's all of a sudden you get taken up by all of their work, and you're not doing
yeah.
what you're writing and directing. But you did have a really good hit
Yeah.
with Kana Kazana. So massive congratulations on that. Award
Thanks.
winning. Made
Yeah.
Best in the West award for 2020. Was it
Yeah,
2020?
that's right.
Yeah,
Last year. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
last year. Sorry, I've got
It's
a
all
COVID blur
it's
over
all
all of this.
blurry. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
blurry. But yeah, no, I think that was a film that was really well received. We had people contacting us after the fact, which is
Ah.
interesting. So that doesn't happen a lot with Made in the West
Yeah.
films.
Wow.
So there's always
Yeah. Wow.
not the broad spectrum of them. So there's always one or two
Yeah.
films that we get past and over correspondence about, and yours was one of them.
Hmm.
So
Oh, that's
um,
amazing. Yeah. No, I had such a lovely response from here, Made in the West.
mm,
It was the final sort of run home for the film. It was the final festival I that we did.
mm,
It was the home one. It was made in Western Sydney. It was written in Western Sydney. I finished off the script when I was living in Lidcombe at the time with my parents' place
mm,
around Auburn, Lidcombe. That's where I was when I was writing it.
mm.
And we shot it in Strathfield. It's all sort of really Western Sydney crew and creatives, a lot of them. So yeah, it was just fitting for it to finish at Made in the West and win the awards were just amazing. Like my my lead actor was so happy, my cinematographer was so happy, and the whole team was really stoked. It was a great night. And it was good to be able to do it in person, because I know that was a weird year, and you guys did a great job of like, organizing it and making sure it ran smoothly, which I think is a big testament to you guys. And I got reached out to so much after, about the film, people saying that they really enjoyed it and what they could see of mine next, and the stuff like that. So really appreciative of that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, there was people, we can't talk too much about it, but there's people talking features about this film. There's people that are talking like longer form content out of it. It was that impactful. So I think that's something to be said for that film, definitely. But
Totally.
working with some of the Made in the West crew, though, I've been interviewing people recently, people like Bina Botticharger. I know that Matthias Bowler is on that team.
Shout out to Matthias.
Yeah, big shout out to Matthias. You guys,
he's a champion of Made in the West. Yeah
totally. Yeah, well, he won the year before you, actually.
That's right, he did it before me.
Yeah. With Campesinos, lovely film, absolutely fantastic film. You guys are working on Here Out West, so can you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, we're working on a couple of things, Matthias and I, actually. One thing is Here Out West, which was where we met. So it's more of a bigger collaboration, that one, with 8 writers. You mentioned Bina. There's also Von Padiag, who's also a Western Sydney filmmaker, writer, producer as well. And there's a bunch of others, Claire and Dee and Tien, Nisrina. I won't name them all, but they're all fantastic Western Sydney filmmakers and up and coming writers and creatives. So we met. Gosh, it's been 4 years now, which is actually crazy. So 2018, I think 3 years now. 2018, we met the first day of development for Here Out West. Initially, it wasn't anything to do with Here Out West. That wasn't even the title. It was just basically an initiative to get emerging writers from Western Sydney to come together and write something. It was all sort of helmed by a couple of great people. One is Co-Curious, which is a company that's producing. And another company is Emerald Productions, which is run by Sheila Jaidev and Lynn Norfer. I really have been working with Sheila already for about 5-6 years. We really sort of knew each other. And I mean, I just love her and everything she does.
Some big names have come out of Emerald, man. Like, when I was doing producing and broadcast for Television Sydney, a lot of their content would come through, and they worked with some pretty big players. Yeah,
they're amazing. Yeah, they've got some really great features in the works and stuff. So Sheila and I mean, she did Ali's Wedding, which was a really famous, a great film in Australia. She also did a recent series called Stateless for Matchbox. So she's been doing a lot of cool stuff. So anyway, so when she kind of put the initiative together, and I just basically applied, because at the time I wasn't doing anything, and I thought, oh, this would be great, and I wasn't going to, but sort of last minute, I decided to apply. So I remember talking. Yeah, so once I applied, I mean, I got in, and then we were in the development, and it was like we didn't know what we were making, so we were just kind of there with zero idea of what was going to happen. And I think initially it was meant to be a bunch of short films, so it was meant to be an idea of like a web series or anthology web series or a short film series, interconnected. But that's the only idea we had, and then it took a lot of work and a great mind like Blake Ashford, who was our mentor and who was our sort of showrunner, and he basically had the brain-gasm to like put it all, to kind of find the spine and the thread of the story. So I think once we started to talk about things and started to spitball a little bit, by the second development room, which was 6 months later, the producers said to us, look, we're gonna make a feature film, which was really exciting. And just the fact that we were going for the big one. So yeah, well, here we are 3.5 years later. I mean, we did our production during COVID. We got funded just before we got into that lockdown in 2020. Then we did a lot of development by Zoom. We did our final scripts and final passes on our drafts by Zoom. We couldn't really meet each other. We just kind of had to, sorry, it's not coming up, is it?
Nah, that's fine. It's fine. So okay. Totally fine.
Sorry, notifications.
It looks like you're brushing our hair aside. You're brushing the audience's hair aside.
I'm brushing some stuff off the thing.
Just relax.
Should have logged out all my social media. Anyway, so basically, about a year later, I mean, year and a half later, we were in production, and we felt very blessed because, we were one of the early projects in Australia to go into to production during that year. It was like the second film or something like that. And being an indie, it was difficult because we obviously didn't have that kind of crazy budget. We had a decent budget, but nothing like crazy. And we had to deal with all the COVID, insurance and policies and protocols. And then we had, actors coming from interstate and directors coming in from interstate. So it was I don't envy the producers. I think they had one of the toughest jobs in the world. And as 8 writers as well, sort of being a part of this big thing that had a lot of moving pieces, I really do commend them for being able to get this together. And also, at the end of the day, making a really beautiful film, which we've seen now, the final version. There is some exciting news about the film that's coming out, but I can't go into it yet. But I think everyone should keep their eyes out for it. It's a Western Sydney. A lot of the writers, and including myself, feel that it is really groundbreaking for Western Sydney filmmaking, and it's also groundbreaking for Australian filmmaking. And not just saying that because we wrote it, but we definitely feel like it is a it does feel like a shift sort of in the paradigm of like Australian film. And I think that it's fresh and unique, and it's new.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something that people should be keeping their eye out for. It's a very, very interesting project with a lot of moving parts that have a lot of different directions. I'm excited to see it. I really am. I think I've talked to in the last 6 months. I think I've talked to like 4 or 5 people that are involved in this project. Right. And every time I hear about it, I just get more and more excited about it. I'm definitely keeping my eye out for Here Out West.
Absolutely. We're nearly at the starting block, so that's going to be exciting. I think because of the lockdown stuff, it's a bit on hold at the moment. But I think once we sort of push through that, I think there'll be some great news out there.
Yeah, totally. But I think that's just part parcel. Like, there's a whole bunch of opportunity to write. There's a whole bunch of opportunity to do pre-production, production, and post-production. But there's not a lot of opportunity to distribute. So we're in this weird position at the moment of like having this freedom to make a lot of content, but there's actually a lack of platforms to show it. So it's a bizarre ratio at the moment. Normally, the ratio is the other way around. So
you're right. That's a really good point. I think especially with cinema distribution as well. I mean, theatrical releases, it's really difficult right now because you can't get people to go to the movies because a lot of cities, they're not allowed to. Things are closed. It's such a weird time. So it is difficult. I don't envy them as well. But I think all we can do as creatives is sort of make things and, hope that the agencies and the government bodies, they sort of work around all this stuff.
Yeah, well, from a producer side of things, I can just, the way that we sort of plan stuff is we look at it like a Tetris game. All these pieces have to go together, but it's a Tetris game. If it starts to go wrong, you have an action plan. So if this happens, this plan happens. If this happens, this plan happens. So there's lots of workarounds. So there's workarounds or the workaround to postpone. So something, well, if things really fall apart, I can postpone this and then do it there. So you need to put planning in now for postponement.
Yeah, I think postponement is a big part of life now, isn't it? So it's kind of about putting things off until things get better and playing the game that way. So I mean, as I said, I don't envy not being a producer.
Oh, there's a dice roll to it all, man. There's definitely a dice roll to it. So when you're setting up your thing, whatever that may be, production or public exhibition, which is the hardest. Public exhibition is really hard. If you set a date on something, there's no predicting what can happen around that date. You've just got to run for the finish line. That's my recommendation to anyone out there. Run for the finish line and have a plan to get in and out. If it's going to fall apart on you, have a plan to get around that.
That's right. Yeah.
And let that know to your investors and everyone and all of your stakeholders. Because that's the big part of it. People are going to be disappointed out of that. So I think that the industry is learning a lot about resilience through this exercise. It's really becoming resilient. Yeah. And the different ideas are flourishing. And the way that we look at, especially pre-production and post-production, through Zoom, through, I think, the linking of the idea of not just being an email conversation, it's now a Zoom conversation. It's a Zoom and email conversation that might be integrated with a work application like, Asana or, Teams or something like that. So there's all of this task allocation software that is out there at the moment. And I just find it very impressive. Like, because running so many networks and so many work teams, if you do that purely over email these days, you're doing a lot of work. So you want to shorten that down and use available platforms that are out there. That big tip to you, producers, directors out there: check out the software that is out there to manage your work teams. I think Asana is one I'd recommend straight up. It's free. It's Creative Commons. But not to get too nerdy and bulk down into how to administratively look at your film. So what have you got going on at the moment, Arka?
So at the moment, well, just before I came, actually, speaking of Matthias again, can't shake him off. But yeah, speaking of Matthias, we were working on a series called it was an ancillary project to here out west. It's called 8 Nights. It was a web series about sort of like, it's a docu-web series about sort of food culture in Western Sydney, and looking at all the different hubs and the Western Sydney food hubs. We were about to actually start shooting on the Sunday, and the Saturday the premiere called the lockdown. So it was really sort of, it was a crazy week. I mean, that's the simplest way to put it. But it was definitely like sort of lots of back and forth, and we were like, should we go? Should we not? We were going to do it. We were still going to shoot it, because you're allowed to shoot, obviously, as with permits. But we just kind of predicted that things were going to get really bad, and then also we had a 2 to 3 week window before I was flying out to come here. So we had to get it done. And then on top of that, I mean, we were doing a live series out on the street. So basically we had to have, we could be as ready as we wanted to be, but we couldn't, plan for like what was going to happen out on the streets. And also, different areas were getting shut down at different times. And then like, it was like lockdown there, red hotspots popping up everywhere. So it was really difficult for us to maneuver that. I mean, it's not like a closed set where you can just close everything and just shoot. So it was kind of it was a tricky one to do. So we postponed that. Hopefully it'll happen at the end of the year or in the summer, or when things get a little bit better and I'm sort of back in the country. But that's what Matthias and I are looking forward to working on. We've kind of been building that for about a year and a half. It sort of is a side project to Here Out West, but it's tied in with the film, but it's kind of a series on its own. And on top of that, I'm actually, speaking of Kazana, well, I'm actually developing the feature at the moment, in the very early development stages at the moment. But I'm got a lovely team to kind of help me through the development process right now. I'm here with a lot of time because I'm in quarantine for 2 weeks, and then I'm here for a couple of months. So in between my work here, I'm trying to sort of get some pages out. Just sort of build the start of that journey as a feature, I think is my sort of goal at the moment. I think that's sort of the two main things I'm working on right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely Kazana. How exciting! I think that would be really boss as a feature. And
I hope so.
As I said, I've got I've got, just in the backlines, obviously there's you've probably got your own development team. I've got other development teams that have been hitting me up about this film. They're like, man, is this dude going to make this movie? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm pretty sure he's onto it. So no, it's good to hear definitely developing that.
Definitely trying to sort of look, it has been a slow process. I'm not gonna pretend that I've been working really fast and hard on it, but it is one of those momentum things. Like I've obviously been sitting with this idea in this film for a long time. I think I wrote the short in 2016, and then I kind of shot it in 2017, and then started to do the circuit in 2018, and then it was 2020 by the time the short sort of finished at Made in the West and got all, did its thing. So it's only sort of since then I've been able to even think about starting writing the feature. And some people work really fast. I've just had a bit of other stuff going on, and Here at West took a lot of my time last year and this year, and just never really I just kind of banked it for a while. But I know exactly what sort of is going to happen. It's just a matter of getting the wheels moving.
Process,
yeah. So and I know things are slow with feature film development, especially indie feature films. I mean, just either it can be done, I guess it can be done really quickly if you've got the financing, or it can take its sweet ass time. So I'm okay with that at the moment. I think I used to be sort of very like hell bent on getting stuff done quickly, but I think that as I've grown, I've kind of realized it's just everything has its own sort of process, and everything has its own time stamp and time frame. So you kind of, even if you want to get ahead of it, some things will slow you down. But then like, it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's like you might run fast and there'll be a wall that'll just stop you anyway, which is out of your control. Or, you know, you just kind of walk and see the wall and go, okay, I can see it, and I'll just sort of like get to it in my own pace and walk around it. And then you kind of at the same pace anyway. So I think, you know, so many things have to come together for a project like a feature film to be made. If you could just do it all on your own, that would be a different story. But you know, so.
I suppose you could, but then you'd have a question of quality. The quality would drop, and then if the aesthetic works with the quality of doing it handheld, all as a solo operator, that'd be interesting. But I don't think a lot of films like that exist.
I mean, they do. They totally do. You can totally run and gun it if you want, but I just think, like, you know, it depends on what you're trying to make. I think if you're trying to make a Shogun style kind of, you know, get the camera on the shoulder, let's go for it kind of film, then absolutely you can do it. Then it's about you putting it together and putting the post in and blah blah blah. But I think if you're trying to have a proper strategy with a feature film that hits the right market and goes to the right audience, and, you know, the right people see it, and you want to do it properly, for lack of a better word, then I think it's got to go the longer route.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. You've inspired me, actually. You've inspired me with your Kana Kazana script, because I was looking at a film that I made 7 years ago called Pushing the Envelope, and it's this gangster film that's in Western Sydney. It's kind of a little bit of tongue in cheek, and it's all with, you know, Australian accents, but a very multicultural sort of film.
Right, cool.
So it's a bit of a paradoxical, stereotypical, non-stereotypical thing. So it's stereotypes, but non-typical stereotypes.
Cool.
So just basically a cross section of Western Sydney, just normal people, just put them in extraordinary roles. So I put these ordinary people in extraordinary roles. And I don't know. I just when I wrote it, I'm like, this is one of my babies, right? I want to turn this into a feature. And then when I wrote it and I did it as a 3-act thing that went for 15 minutes, and as I've reflected on it, I watched it the other day and I'm like, man, this is the feature film I want to write. So I was going through my notes, and I've crazily enough had this thought like 5 years ago, and I started writing this feature. So I've picked it up again now that COVID's happened.
Great.
So now that's where I'm exploring is expanding out those ideas. I think there comes a time as a filmmaker where you do that. I know I talk to two kinds of filmmakers. I talk to filmmakers that jump straight in and do a feature and realize the depth of that problem. Because making a feature is a big fucking problem, right? That you got to solve. It's a massive problem you got to solve.
Yep.
And I've worked with and discussed with directors that do that. Go out and make an hour 20 feature-length film. Do it all on a DSLR. This sort of running gun sort of filmmaking. But then I've talked to other writers, actually, that become directors, or actors that become directors, and they go that longer route. And some of them that I've talked to, it may have taken them 10 years to get their feature idea just together, just the idea together, and then start writing it. It might take them another 5 years to do that. So from realizing a film as a filmmaker, it might be 15 years before you make your first feature.
Absolutely. I mean, I always look at it as like probably a 5-year project for me. That's like the minimum. And then it's kind of like, it could be longer, and it probably will be. Like, as I said, I mean, if I start counting the journey of Kana from when I first penned it, which is 2016-ish, where I had the idea, it's already been 5 years. So it's kind of like time just flies. But yeah, I might not, if I don't count the short and I count the start of the feature, I mean, I'm just kind of starting now. So probably another 3 to 5 years before. I mean, hopefully it's quicker, because I do have a proof of concept and I do have a short film to go for it. I do have things to show for it. So I think that's what helps if you make the shorter version. If it allows for it, if your film allows, if your story, I should say, allows for a shorter version, and if you can make it to show what it's a proof of concept. You're just showing that this is what I'm trying to make. I think it can only benefit your project in the long run, because you go to some festivals, you win some awards, maybe, you show them what you made, you show them what you're capable of, what kind of genre, what kind of style, how you work, what your directing style is, all that stuff. So then they have a little bit more trust in you, or the people that are going to give you money have a bit more trust in you, of going, okay, cool, give you this much money because I feel like you can do it. Whereas if you're just kind of going in blind, I mean, the other way to do it is you make your own feature and you just run and gun it and show them that. But it's kind of like, yeah, then as you said, there's a quality issue sometimes that comes up because you're not sort of getting the help from the different,
It's not
departments
lit
that you need.
properly. Some shots are going to be soft.
Yeah,
You didn't,
that's right.
some shots you should
That's
have
right.
tracked, but you've just done it on shoulder.
Yeah, and so
There's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong with
if you
that.
have the technical, expertise on that stuff, it obviously helps. Like I think a friend of mine once said, like, filmmaking, is like the army. It's like being in the army, or it's like a military kind of thing. And basically, instead of looking at it as like such a creative thing, like, you can start looking at it technically as like a military or an army, like when you're making the actual thing. And everybody has their role. There's a bit of a hierarchy. There's sort of like people telling you what to do, and you kind of do your part and you do it really well, and then that's how the whole thing comes together. So I think there's a lot to be said for that kind of way of filmmaking, and the traditional way of filmmaking, and sort of course you can sort of like modernize it and do your own version, but I think and you don't need that extensive crew. You could do it with a smaller crew, you could do it with a skeleton crew, you can do it with whatever your budget allows. So there's amazing independent films being made now for like $2-3 million, and that's as low end of the budget scale. Even here out west wasn't a huge budget at all, and I can say that the team pulled together, and it's such a beautiful looking film. So it's all possible. It's just a matter of, I think, having a good story and good, the vision.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there with militarizing the operation. A
Yeah.
little bit of history in that. Film production actually came out of the military. It already
Yeah,
had
right.
it. And I always look at a camera as a crew-served weapon. So it's the asset. Everyone protects the asset, and you use that to do your. That's where battle is sought. And in fact, it's called you shoot with a camera.
That's right.
You shoot with it, and you look through an aperture in that camera. It is warlike in that sort of sense. But one thing I really do appreciate about it is that it doesn't destroy, it creates. And
absolutely.
So that's the contrast. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Running it as a hierarchy, but as well as a collaboration as well.
Totally.
I don't look at it as a dictatorship.
No. I mean, I guess I use the word hierarchy, but it's just more of a management term, I think, rather than a political term. I think, like, you can have a great set where everybody knows their role and everybody knows what they need to do, and still be happy to come into to work every day and finish that film or whatever it is. And you can motivate people, like, you can, if I strongly believe that, like, if people, even your below the line crew, like, your grips and gaffers and stuff like that, a lot of the time people think that they're just kind of like there for the job and that's it, and they get paid and they F off kind of thing. But I think, like, it's not necessarily true. I mean, I've worked on shorts and smaller projects where grips and gaffers and the electricians and whatever, LX, they've all come on and really enjoyed being a part of the project because they really truly think it's a cool story, or they believe in what that story is trying to say, or they believe in the direction of that film or that TV show, whatever it is. So, and a lot of them might not read the script in depth or at all, but they understand what they're making, I think. So it's as an actor as well, I've spoken to a lot of crew in my time, and I do all the time when I'm on set, and I like to gauge what they're feeling about the project, and you can really get an idea from the crew about how it's going. And I find that the ones that enjoy enjoy the story or enjoy what's being told, I think they're the happiest, and they're happy to be at work. And then there's some that are just like, this sucks, I just want to finish this job and go home. So I think it says a lot for you to find the right team and motivate them and have a story that they can connect to. And I think that not every single person on your set is going to connect to your story, but you have the key creatives, of course, they do, and then you have I think it's about building the team is sort of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, definitely about building the team. I don't know. I think there's definitely a contrast though between TV crews and film crews. Film crews I find to be more like what you talk about. Everyone's involved in the project. They see a good vision for it. Don't get me wrong. I've been on some TV crews that look at it that way, but I think the most unhappiest people I've ever seen are sound engineers and sound operators are usually the most unhappy.
I don't really blame them, to be honest, because it's just people don't shut the hell up, and they want peace and quiet and they can't get it. But anyway,
Yeah, it's never quiet. There's always a plane flying over, or there's always a bus going by. They're constantly in a
they can be very irritable. Yeah, they can be very irritable. But yeah, no,
and
I agree.
And with TV, I think some of that pressure comes from money as well. When the money's ticking over, because everyone's there,
That's right.
everyone's getting paid, and you've got to get that. You've got to capture that content in that moment, and that can add stress to it. But ultimately, I think it's about leadership. If you've got a good leader, you generally can get a good film done. And that's not necessarily the director; it could be the producer as well. So if there's good leadership in there, that leadership, like a saying that I use in this regard is that a fish wiggles from the head. Like if the head is sound, the rest of the communication through the body will be sound as well. So I think if you've got a good leader that leads by example, like for instance, just little things like showing up on set. Like I always say to other directors, don't be a late director, be an early director. Because some directors rock up late. They're like, well, I'm the director. You can just start packing and getting shit ready for me because I'm the director. I'm like, no, you got to be the first one there, bro. And you got to be the last one to leave.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think that I agree with you. When I was directing my shorts and things, like I just loved being on set. So as an actor, I've had to be on set early a lot as well. But I think, actors are a little bit different. You kind of have your own crew and you do your own thing until you get called and then you come on. But I think when you're a director, you kind of go on, you see what's going on everywhere. Like you can kind of see what that guy's doing. You can see what that person's doing. You can see what the producers are talking about. You can also go and chat with the actors if you want. You can go and talk to makeup if you want. Like, you can kind of oversee the whole thing. But you're not necessarily the bad guy, because I think the producers tend to take the role of sort of bad cop anyways, most of the time. So I think the director can kind of go on, and I think the best thing you can do as a director, honestly, is go on and talk to everyone early in the morning or whenever you start. And you're right, be there early, be there on the call time, like, at the first call time. And I think just have that rapport with everyone so that, people feel like they can work for you, but at the same time, they don't feel scared of you, or they don't feel like, like that you're just doing this for yourself and they're just kind of disposable. Like, I think it's important to make everybody feel like they're a part of the team every time. And I think this stuff is quite natural things. Like these are natural things. So I think it's hard to kind of teach someone how to do this, but I think it's as you said, leadership thing is pretty important. But more than that, just being a sociable person. I don't think every director has to be a leader. I think every director has to somewhat be interpersonal and have interpersonal skills and be able to just talk to people and communicate. Because the worst thing, in my opinion, you could do as a director is not communicate with your crew and your team and your cast and everybody. So yeah, I think those are the key sort of takeaways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think ultimately though, if there's any advice to give out there to people, I think, giving it a go, starting somewhere. Totally. You're not going to end up on a $3 million feature on your first go. You've got to start somewhere.
No.
Enter your local festivals, get on the circuit, check out the networks. I think that's the key there as well. But man, I think we're close to out of time. To check out your films online, where can people go?
Good question. They can check out Kana. So if you want to watch Kana Kazana, it's online now on Vimeo. Best way to get there is probably just from my socials. You could go to my socials on Instagram. So it's just at Arkadas, ARKADAS _. Or you could go to the Kana Kazana page, which has got its own Instagram page at Kana Kazana.
Yep.
And the link's there. Just you can click through and just go to the Vimeo and watch the link. So it's online there, and also Here Out West will be coming out hopefully this year, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah,
that's it.
Where you can watch stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show today, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me, mate. I really appreciate it, and thanks again for everything.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. Well, you guys have been watching The Pagey Train. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple iTunes. You can find us on Amazon. You can find us on Overcast. You can find us basically anywhere you can find podcasts, iHeartRadio, and of course YouTube. And if you've been watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and of course tick like. You've been watching the Pagey Train, and we'll see you next time. Sonic Boom, man, that's all done.
Awesome, dude.
Man, can I just got to get some promo stuff. So can I get you to do double guns for me at the screen when it comes to you?